Our son David is our second born. He's a freshman now, but back in fourth or fifth grade, one of his things is that he would get up early on Sunday mornings and come to church with me. Now, if you don't know this, Sunday mornings for a preacher's family is a pretty chaotic, stressful time, especially with four kids, because I'm here early and Brianna's wrangling all of the kids together, especially when they were little. So I would take, a kid or two to kind of help out, and usually David would roll with me to church on Sunday morning. But this one particular morning, I got up and was ready to go, and he was still asleep, so I came to church. A little while later, Brianna shows up with everybody and had the two services, and after the 11 o'clock service, we're down front, and she's like, all right, I'm gonna go to the back and get the kids. I was like, sounds good. So she goes back there, she picks up her younger two, and she goes and gets them. Then she goes to the fourth and fifth grade room, and she's like, hey, I'm here to get David. And they're like, yeah, David's not here. And she's like, no. She's like, Chris dropped him off at the first service, so wherever y'all put the, and they're like, no, Chris didn't drop him off at the first service. Do you remember the scene from Home Alone? When the mom's in the airport, you remember that? And Kevin's not here, and she goes, Kevin, and then passes out. Very similar scene unfolded back there in the back. I was not back there, but what I was told is that she sprinted to her car fast enough to win an Olympic gold medal. She drops everything. She flies back to the house. Meanwhile, David, it was just like the movie. Like, he wakes up and realizes he made his family disappear. And he's kind of looking around. And so by the time Brianna's back, he had moseyed it on over to our neighbor's house. And by the time she got there, he was eating scrambled eggs, watching cartoons, having a lovely Sunday morning. Brianna goes back there, and it's one of those moments, like in the chaos that is Sunday morning. I didn't communicate, we didn't remember, and in all the hustle and bustle, we forgot one of the four most important things in our life. And I share that with you today because I understand, like, when you get to a day like today, like you're here, you have done everything that you can possibly fit into your calendar with the parties and the shopping and the family dynamics. And if this is your first Christmas as a divorced person and who gets what custody and who gets on Christmas Eve and Christmas morning, you figured all of that out, all the shopping, all the Christmas parties, and you're here. And it is so easy to come to a moment like this and forget the most important thing. The fact that you and I are celebrating not just that a baby was born, but that it was Emmanuel, God with us, the Messiah, King Jesus was born. And this is why we do everything that we do, is to center on that King Jesus was born. And over these past several weeks here at church, we've been walking through just really the chaos of Christmas. And we've looked at the wise men and the shepherds and Mary. And today we're looking at Joseph's perspective. And all of these players there, the nativity, they all had a very chaotic, very stressful, very first Christmas. But Jesus was there at the center of it all. And as stressful and as chaotic as all of their lives were at that moment, they were a part of something way bigger than just the birth of a new child. They were part of the nativity. They were part of the very first Christmas, the day that Emmanuel, God with us, was born. And I just think that Christmas, and especially Christmas Eve, is just a powerful reminder that God's story is bigger than our chaos. The story that God is writing, the story that God wrote in the very first Christmas was bigger than Mary and Joseph and the shepherds and the wise men. The story that God is writing in your life and in my life is so much bigger than me, and it's so much bigger than you. But in the moment, it feels like the stress, the chaos, just the pandemonium that is the Christmas holiday season can be a bit overwhelming. And so today, just for a brief time, if we can push all of that aside, if we can push all of the stress, all the dysfunction, all the family stuff, and I realize that some of you're here for church for the very first time just to make mom or grandma happy, and I get that, and I understand that. But you're here, and if just for a moment you can understand that today it's not just about lighting a candle, it's just not about wearing red and green and eating food and opening up presents. Today, we celebrate the birth of King Jesus, Emmanuel, God with us. And today, we're looking at Joseph's story. And if you've got a Bible, we'll be in Matthew chapter 1 today. And Joseph is the last of the players that we're looking at here in the nativity scene. I like Joseph a lot. Just over the years, I've studied him. What's interesting with Mary and Joseph, the shepherds, the wise men, even the angels, every single one of them, except for Joseph, had speaking words recorded in our New Testament. If you study the life of Joseph, he is not recorded once and speaking any words. All we know Joseph by was just by his obedience or what he did or what he didn't do or how he followed the Lord in his life. And this very first Christmas, poor Joseph got some pretty tough news, some stressful news, some news that didn't go according to the thing that he had hoped would happen. Matthew chapter 1, we're going to pick it up in verse 18. Here's how the story unfolds. It says, "This is how Jesus the Messiah was born. His mother Mary was engaged to be married to Joseph, but before the marriage took place, while she was still a virgin, she became pregnant through the power of the Holy Spirit. Joseph, her fiance, was a good man." If you've got a pen, you can underline that he was a good man or a righteous man. He was a good man and did not want to disgrace her publicly, so he decided to break the engagement quietly. Now, I need to paint this scene for you. You can imagine this scene unfolding. You can imagine the emotion in this conversation. Mary sits Joseph down and she begins to tell him what happened. You know, I'm pregnant. And as soon as he hears those words, he knows it's not his. And the heartbreak and the anger and the confusion, the frustration that would pour over his face, and the sincerity that Mary was trying to explain to him, no, it's not yours, but it's nobody else's. It's the power of the Holy Spirit. You can imagine that scene unfolding. The tears, the chaos, the stress. This is not what we had planned, Mary. And so Joseph, being a good man, being a righteous man, wanted to honor her and treat her well and did not want to embarrass her or disgrace her. And so his plan was let's just kind of do away with this quietly. Mary, you go live your life and I'm going to go live my life. And what you need to understand is that Joseph had a good plan for a big problem. Joseph had a very good plan. It was a righteous and the best plan that he knew to treat and honor Mary, even though it wasn't any fault of his own, for a big problem. And you can imagine if you're Joseph, the way he thought his life would go and being engaged to Mary and excited about the wedding and all that would entail. And Joseph is a carpenter and he's probably excited about his carpentry business, probably launched his Etsy store and is building things and posting things and all the things. And all of a sudden, Mary goes, hey, Joseph, we got to have a conversation. Yeah, what are we going to talk about? Well, you just need to sit down. What's up? And she begins to tell him she's pregnant and it's not his. And you can just imagine his world will come collapsing down. What he thought, what he hoped, what he planned in life was just not exactly the way it had turned out. And my guess is for many of you, the way you had planned for 2024 didn't exactly pan out that way. You thought you'd still be married instead of you're divorced. You thought you'd still be employed and now you're without a job. You thought you'd be healed and you got a worse diagnosis. You thought you'd be financially set and you've had financial setbacks. You thought 2024 would go differently. You come to the end and in your mind, you're a good man, you're a good woman, and so you've got to figure out these plans for a really big problem because what you thought would happen, it just didn't turn out that way. Over the Thanksgiving break, we had 14 people at our house for the entire week. Let me just say that one more time so you can... 14 people spent the night at our house from Monday through Saturday. It was my entire side of the family came in from Colorado and California and all came in. And it was a great time. It was 14 people. You can imagine all of that. But the Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, our family tradition is we always go buy a Christmas tree and set it up, do all the Christmas thing. And so the 14 of us went to the Christmas tree farm that we always go to. Now, you bring grandkids and grandparents, it's chaos ensues. And so we pulled in and immediately get out of the car, and grandparents and grandkids, they go to hot chocolate, popcorn, all the snacks, that kind of stuff. They could care less about the Christmas tree. So Brianna and I, she and I, so we'll go get the Christmas tree. So we go to this place, and Brianna had a certain tree that she wanted, and she goes to the spot where they were last year. They weren't there. And she finds the guy, and she's like, hey, where are the Christmas trees? And he goes, oh, this year, those you have to go cut down yourself. Be honest with you, I did not want to do landscaping on my Thanksgiving break. And Brianna goes, we have to go cut it down. I was like, babe, the way I view cutting down a Christmas tree is the way I view the self-checkout line at the grocery store. That's kind of your job. Like, I'm paying for the tree. You should cut it down, but it's an experience. I'm like, I don't want an experience. I want the tree. I don't want to go home. And they're like, no, it's an experience. And so the kids were nowhere to be found. And so it was me and Brianna going to, cut down a shrub. And I'm like, oh my goodness, what are we doing? And so where are these trees? They're 100 yards across the field. So we hike down this field, and all of a sudden I get down there, and I'm like, I'm getting in a worse mood by the minute. And I'm like, where are these trees? And she goes, oh, these are trees. And I was like, where are the saws? And so I went and found that. I was like, hey, what do I do? He's like, go grab this handsaw. I'm like, I go to a handsaw? You don't get chainsaws? And he's like, no, liability issues. Anyway. So I was like, all right, I cut it down. Will you all come get it? And he's like, no, you've got to drag it over here. I got to cut down. What am I paying for? Like, I'll just go in my backyard and cut down a shrub and we'll put it in there. And it's like, no, it's the experience. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So I find this tree, Brianna finds this tree and she likes it. And it's a 9-foot tall tree and we had a 10-foot tall ceiling. She goes, this is perfect. And I cut the thing down and we carry it over. And I'm just telling you, what you see in the car commercials, that's not how it plays out here in Georgia. It's muddy. It's kind of, the tree's got all the sap and everything on there. So we throw it down there and then we got to wait. We get back in. And by the time we drive back home, what I had thought would happen was not exactly how this day was going. And it got even worse. And so all the kids go inside, the grandparents and everything. And I'm by myself and I get this tree and I'm just mad. And I march this tree in. The stand is there and I put it in the stand and I just shove the thing up there. Now, either our ceiling shrunk or that tree was taller than 9 feet. I still can't understand what happened because here's the picture. Let me show you this picture. I shoved that thing in place and it's all 14 people around and it got real quiet really fast. And I'm not making this up. I'm there and I'm just fuming. And my dad comes up to me and he pats me on the shoulder and he goes, she's a real beaut, Clark. I'm just like, oh, what I had thought would out, it's not at all the way it had planned. I had envisioned in my mind, this wonderful thing, 14 people picking out the perfect tree and everything going on. And all of a sudden, this tree's jammed up there against my ceiling. Now, for many of you, you thought 2024 would go very differently. And you're sitting here today and you're frustrated. And you're mad and you're irritated, you're disappointed, whatever adjective you want to fill in there, and it just did not go the way you'd planned. You're a good man, you're a good woman, so you're going, well, I'll just figure this out myself. And you've got a plan just like Joseph had a plan. But God had something different in mind. Look what happens in verse 20. It says, as he considered this, so he's thinking about trying to be a good, righteous man. As he considered this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream. Joseph, son of David, the angel said, do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife, for the child within her was conceived by the Holy Spirit. And she will have a son, and you are to name him Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins. All of this occurred to fulfill the Lord's message through his prophet. Look, the virgin will conceive a child. She will give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel, which means God is with us. And Matthew begins to say, listen, there's something bigger going on here. And Matthew quotes Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14. And he's trying to get us to zoom out, going, listen, there's something far bigger at play here. There's a far bigger story that God is writing here. So Joseph, he had a good plan for a big problem, but don't miss this. God had a better plan for a much bigger story. God had a way better plan for a way bigger story going, listen, Joseph, I know it's not the way you thought it would go. I know it's not the way you thought it would be, but Joseph, you're going to have a son. You're going to name him Jesus. And oh, by the way, he's going to save his people from their sins. This is the Messiah. This is the one that the prophets wrote about 700 years earlier. This is Emmanuel, God with us. Joseph, I know you're scared. Joseph, I know you're stressed. Joseph, I know you're hurt. Joseph, I know you're confused. But Joseph, there's a much bigger story going on here. And if you would just trust in who God says he is and that God will do what he says he's going to do and just walk it out in obedience, Joseph, you will be a part of something so much bigger and grander than you could ever imagine. But Joseph, you're going to have to lay down your own good plans. You're going to have to lay down your own good thoughts and ideas and trust that God has a better plan and is writing a much bigger story. But again, for so many of us, we get so focused in on our stress, our chaos, our hurt, our betrayal, our pain, and rightfully so. Like for some of you, what you've gone through in 2024, it hurt. The way your boss treated you, the way your ex treated you, the way your in-laws treated you, the way a random stranger, the way you got treated, it hurt. You were lied to, you were betrayed, you were cheated on, you got let go. Things went from bad to worse, and you haven't even reached the end of the year yet. And you're so focused on yourself, and God is trying to write a much bigger story. And if you would just zoom out just a little bit, saying, God, this hurts. This is painful. This is not what I had envisioned. But God, I'm trusting that your hand and provision in my life is far bigger and greater. And so God, I'm going to lay down my own plans and my own thoughts, and I'm going to walk into 2025 with palms open up, surrendering my life, my will, my way to you. You can either do that or you can stay so focused in on yourself and miss the things that God is doing all around you. Again, when we had 14 people at our house for a week there at Thanksgiving, one of the activities that we did was we decided to take a family picture. So we hired a photographer. She came out and took great pictures. And so let me show you the picture of all 14 of us. Oh, yeah, I know. Isn't that sweet? That's 3 generations right there. And that's a lovely picture. And I saw that picture. And do you know what the first and only thing is that I focused on, looked at, cared about in that picture was? Do you know? This thing right here. That's it. I looked at the same thing that you would have looked at if you were in the picture. And I looked at that, I was like, oh my goodness, eyes are squinty, wrinkles, mouth is kind of crooked. Like, I looked at that, I was like, not, and I was like, well, zoom out. And so kind of pull it, yeah, much better. And for many of you, you get so focused in on, that's not exactly the way I thought it would be. And God's going, no, zoom out. This is 3 generations of family and memories and vacations and a photograph to capture this moment. And you're so focused in on the wrinkles. You're so focused in on you, and it's just not perfect the way you wanted it to go. And God's going, I get it. I understand it. But if you only focus on yourself and on your pain, you're going to miss out on so much that God is doing in you, through you, and around you. I just wonder how many of us, we come to the end of 2024 and we're so inwardly focused that God's going, listen, I'm doing something great in your family. I'm doing something great in your community. I'm doing something great in the world. And you are a small part of a much bigger story. And this is the decision that Joseph had to make. Joseph, you can carry through on your good plans. You got a big problem and you're a good, righteous man. You're going to do it the right way. Or Joseph, you can surrender your plans and trust that God is writing a bigger story. And this child that's to be born is not just another baby. It is the Messiah, the one that would save his people from their sins. This is the one that the prophets wrote about. Joseph, the decision is totally up to you. And look what Joseph does in verse 24. It says, when Joseph woke up, he did as the angel of the Lord commanded and took Mary as his wife. But he did not have sexual relations with her until her son was born, and Joseph named him Jesus. When Joseph woke up, it just said he did what he was told to do. He woke up, he married the girl, he didn't consummate the marriage until after Jesus was born. And when Jesus was born, he named him Jesus. He did everything according to the plan that God had laid out before him. He surrendered his will and his way and his plan and his life to be a part of a bigger story that God was writing. And so what do you do with all of this? I would just encourage you this Christmas, surrender your small plans for God's much bigger story. Surrender your smaller plan. The thing that you think is so important, surrender that for a story, a much bigger story that God is writing, because you have no idea what God is doing in you, through you, and around you if you're so focused on yourself. But here's the thing, you have every right to be. I know the pain and the hurt and the frustration that you've gone through, the disappointment, the heartache, and you come to the end of 2024 and it just did not turn out the way you wanted to. I get it. And you can choose to be mad and focus in on yourself and just go, and I'll figure this out myself in 2025. Or you can go, Lord, my plans, my will, my way, my pain, my hurt, my sorrow, Jesus, it is yours. And I trust that you will take it and use it to write a much bigger story than anything I could ever ask, think, or imagine. And what's interesting is in the 17 verses before this, in Matthew chapter 1, verses 1 through 17, it's basically Matthew's account of the family tree of Jesus. And he just goes through all the different lineage. And in Matthew's account, he mentions King Solomon. Solomon was the father of Rehoboam, and he was the son of King David. But Solomon is there in the family tree. Now, we don't know this, but here's where my mind went as I was looking at this week. I wonder, and again, I don't know, and we can only speculate, but I wonder if when Joseph was contemplating on what to do after he woke up, and the angel told him after he woke up, right before verse 24, and it says he woke up and he did. I just wonder if the words of his great ancestor Solomon, if those words ever came to the top of his mind. And the words would be, trust in the Lord with all your heart. And do not depend upon your own understanding, but seek his will in all that you do, and he will show you which path to take. We don't know, but I can tell you from personal experience in my life, when I've had things that have not gone my way, when I've had more pain and heartache than I can imagine, those words have certainly comforted me. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. And maybe 2024 was awesome, maybe 2024 was horrible. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Maybe you got married, maybe you got divorced. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Maybe you had a baby, maybe you had a miscarriage. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Maybe you got a job, maybe you got let go. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Maybe you got healed, maybe you got diagnosed. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Maybe you got engaged, maybe you still can't get a date. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. There are these things in life where we're going, I thought it would be this. I'm experiencing this, and I'm going to fill in the gap with trusting the Lord with all my heart. And Joseph did. And he woke up. He took Mary as his wife, didn't consummate the marriage till after the baby was born. And when the baby was born, he named him Jesus and did exactly what the angel of the Lord had told him to do. He walked in obedience and surrendered his plans, his thoughts, and his ideas to be a part of a bigger story that God was writing. And I just wondered in the years to come, how many times Joseph thought back to that moment and that pinnacle moment in his life where he had a decision to make. Divorce her, send Mary away, do it quietly and respectfully, or walk into the most confusing, complicated, unknown thing in my life, but trusting that God's story and plan is far bigger than anything that I could imagine. And Joseph did. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. I'll finish with this. It's John chapter 8, verse 12, and it's the words of Jesus. And Jesus would say this. Jesus spoke to the people once more and said, I am the light of the world. If you follow me, you won't have to walk in darkness because you will have the light that leads to life. I am the light of the world. If you follow me, meaning the decision is totally up to you and totally up to you. Jesus goes, I am the light of the world. If you choose to trust me, if you choose to follow me, if you choose to walk in my way, you will not walk in darkness, but the choice is totally yours. Joseph, your fiance is pregnant and it's not yours, and I know it's confusing and I know it's heartbreaking. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend upon your own understanding. Seek his will in all you do, and he will show you which path to take. And I don't know what 2024 was like for you. I don't know what 2025 holds for you. But I do know this. If you choose to surrender your life, your will, your way, and trust in the Lord, you will not have to walk in darkness because you will have Jesus, the light of the world. Let me pray for us. Jesus, I pray that in this moment, I don't know what kind of baggage walked into this room. I don't know what kind of dysfunction walked into this room. But God, my prayer that is in this moment, that every single individual, man, woman, and child, would walk into 2025 surrendering their life, their will, their way to you. And knowing because you are the light of the world, we won't have to walk in darkness anymore. And just in the quietness of your soul, maybe just recommit and saying, Jesus, I recommit my life to you to walk in the light of Jesus so I won't have to walk in darkness anymore. Jesus, we love you. We thank you for being born, for living, for dying, for coming back from the grave. We ask all these things in your precious and holy name. Amen.